Good afternoon. Today we have a special treat for you today. We have a special show that we're going to do, and it's going to be called The George Ramsey Story. You know, Detroit has been known around the world as the music capital of the world for the years that Motown has put out the sounds that have changed America. But there's an interesting story, an underlying story about how that sound was created and who are the individuals behind that sound. And today we are blessed with Mr. Ramsey, who's going to talk about how he was involved in the Motown sound and how the Motown sound actually had a life story to how that sound was created and the individuals that made it possible. So this morning we want to welcome George and say, good afternoon, my brother. Good to see you. And we are really looking forward to the story that you're about to tell us, because a lot of people don't know. They heard the sound, but don't know all of the pieces that went together to make the sound happen. So we're very glad to have you here today, and we're just going to sit back and relax and allow you to tell your story exactly the way that you lived it. It's not a story that we're just telling, but we're talking about what we have lived and the contribution that have been made around the world. So, George, why don't you just start out by telling us, how did you get started involved with music here in the city of Detroit?
Well, I was very fortunate during the period when I grew up here. I was born here in Detroit, but I went to schools had a musical program. All the schools, elementary, intermediate, and high schools. In my elementary school, I was very fortunate to have a music teacher. What she would do, when we would go into the classroom, she'd have us put our heads down on the desk, and she would play a song called Claire de Lune. And I didn't realize what was happening, but we were getting musical meditation that was really happening. And we would just wake up. I would wake up refreshed, and stimulated the desire of me to be involved musically, which I ended up playing in my high school band, sung in the choirs. But in my elementary school, I started off there. One of the friends at that point when I was in elementary school, Trowbridge School in Detroit, there was a fellow named Rudolph Proctor. He became known professionally as Rudy Robinson.
Oh.
Rudy and I grew up, we went to school together, and I got into junior high school. I was very fortunate, came in contact with Alice McLeod, who ended up marrying John Coltrane, became professionally known as Alice Coltrane. She had a sister named Marilyn McLeod, who Marilyn became a successful songwriter, producer. She wrote songs on Anita Baker and Diana Ross, I think Love Hangover Show. She was a Grammy Award winning songwriter. Another girl, Laura Newton, she became known professionally as Laura Lee. She ended up singing at Invictus, Harlem Record Company. George Goldsmith, he was a drummer. All these were people that I came out of school with. I mean, we was growing up, it was very competitive musically speaking, because everyone wanted to do something musically. You wasn't playing instruments, you wanted to play a saxophone like Charlie Parker. You wanted to sing, but and that evolved to the point where I started singing in a group. Guys in high school, we sung at it was a venue here in Detroit called the Warfield Theater. Very popular theater. It was comparable to the Apollo in New York or the Regal in Chicago, and all the major acts, the black acts, came through the Warfield Theater. So this is the stage that we wanted to get to sing, which I did. Me and the group that I had a group called the East Side Crystals.
All right.
And we sang. There was a facility there on East Warren in St. Albans. It was Marcus Garvey, United Negro Improvement Association. UNIA, he had a hall there on St. Alban and Warren, which is right around the corner from where Bobby Rogers, who sang with the Miracles, Bobby used to live there. Anyway, we'd have talent search, talent presentations that we all sung at the Liberty Hall before we got to the Warfield stage. And so this is, it just fed my desire to be a part of that music scene growing up. I went to high school, I went to the Northeastern High School. I like to refer to that as Motown University.
All right.
Simply because, in fact, that's where Berry Gordy attended. He didn't graduate, he attended. A couple of his siblings went to Northeastern. Mary Wilson and Florence Ballard of Screams went to Northeastern. Martha Reeves went to Northeastern. Bobby Rogers and Marv Tarplin, who was the Miracles guitar player, they went to Northeastern. Sylvester Potts and Huey Davis, the Sylvester sung with the, still sang with the Contours, and their guitar player Huey Davis went to Northeastern. You know, you had Johnny Griffin played piano. He was the Funk Brothers. He went to Northeastern. Euro Jones, Funk Brother drummer, went to Northeastern. Freddie Gorman, who sung with the Originals, went to Northeastern. Sonny Sanders, who was an arranger, producer at Motown, went to Northeastern. I mean, so the list was on and on and on. So it was just that music that was just happening. It was developing. No one realized that it was going to evolve into that Motown sound, obviously, but that is what happened. And, you know, so it just fed my desires. Like I said, when I went into the service, I was singing in a group when I was in the Air Force, and that's what I did. I had a job. I was a clerk, but I also formed a group. I put a group together. We started singing while I was in the service and ended up competing in what they had. Air Force had what you call the Tops in Blues talent search, and this is what my group participated in. One of the legendary singers in the music industry, Chuck Jackson, he sung in a group in the Air Force, participated in that Air Force contest, and also a fellow that I met named Johnny Bristol. Johnny ended up coming to Motown, ended up as a successful writer, producer. He also sung in this talent contest that I participated in. So, I mean, my life was just always about music. You know, always music was around us because this is what we did as a form of entertainment. The radio was very big.
Right.
The records became, you know, the 45, people don't realize, but 45 records was designed just to promote the artist. You know, it became a big record selling business, became successful for a lot of people, but it really started out just promoting artists. So we were always hearing music and wanting to be a part of that. And after I got out of the service, I started working. That's when I went to the post office and I reconnected with Freddie Gorman. I was in high school. He and I were in the same band together. As I said, along with Alice Coltrane and a host of other folks. But Freddie and I maintained a relationship. And I just started following him, and it evolved into his relationship there at Motown.
Well, you know, as you were explaining, all of the different people who are involved in the music culture, and that's what I'm going to call it, the music culture here in the city of Detroit. People who played instruments and who later went on to do great things as musicians and talented writers and talented singers. We were surrounded in our community at that time by musical expression, creativity, and we all kind of got caught up into that, and how it led to various careers and opportunities. And just now, as you're saying, as you came back from the service, and Freddie Gorman is one of the classmates of yours, and I know you shared earlier that Freddie Gorman was a writer on one of the Motown's first hits.
Yeah.
And that was
Please, Mr. Postman.
Please, Mr. Postman, which was known around the world.
Yeah, right. It set the company, it became the first crossover record for them. You know. But also, even for that, Freddie, he really isn't as well known as he should have been, I think, because he wrote the song that made Berry, not made Berry, but convinced Berry to sign Diana Ross, and I think they were called the Primettes at that point. Berry wasn't interested in another girl's group. I think he had the Marvelettes or whatever. But anyway, Freddie wrote a song, I think I Want a Guy, something. It was a song that he wrote that Diana sung, and Berry liked it, so that convinced Berry to keep them on the label.
All right.
So I mean, he had a lot of input in that sense, you know, because they were grooming Freddie to become the single voice. You know, they had Marv Johnson and singing Sammy Ward. I think those were the voices, solo artists that. And then that was even before Marvin Gaye came, because Marvin came with Harvey Fuqua and a recording group. But then with Freddie was being groomed to be the man, you know, to be that solo artist.
All right.
And it didn't happen for him.
All right. And we know that again, this was a lifeblood. This was part of people's lives. They were living this. It wasn't just, say, a career that I chose to be as a job. This was actually something that we lived, we breathed, and we were committed to. So as you were saying, in Freddie's case, he went on, and at this particular time, because he wasn't successful in one venue, didn't mean he didn't go and be successful in another venue. Is that correct?
Exactly.
So he went on to become part of a group of, yeah.
The originals, he became the same, but also even that before, because he had a couple of stints at Motown. He started off, and then his career, like I said, he wanted to be a solo artist, and they weren't happening. That wasn't happening for him, so he ended up going over to Golden World.
Okay.
Wingate had a label over there on Davidson in Detroit. Freddie hooked up over there with I think Edwin Starr was over there at that point. I don't know, it was the Spinners. I don't know if the Spinners was over there. Anyway, there's a couple other groups.
Right.
Freddie had about 3 or 4 good songs there at Wingate, which became very popular in England. You know, because he didn't get the airplay, but before his career could get off the ground there with Wingate, Golden World, Barry bought Golden World out, which is because Wingate had a 16-track studio.
Right.
Barry only had 8.
Right.
So he ended up buying Golden World, and that bought Edwin Starr and Freddie Gorman back to Motown. And that's when Lamont Dozier was putting the group together, the original, C.P. Spencer, Hank Dixon, Walt Gaines, and they became that quartet. But even before that, it was a quintet because Joe Stubbs, Levi Stubbs, who sung with the Four Tops. His brother was originally in the group.
Okay.
The first recordings that they had, Joe was the lead singer on it, I think it was. You know,
okay.
They did an album, and then Joe left, and then it became the quartet as they derived his success as.
Right. And as you mentioned, and of course we are also very much with you when you talked about Golden World, because most people always think of Detroit as being a one record label city, but there were multiple labels in this city, multiple talents that came out. We probably could go back and list a number of different groups and artists that came out of Detroit through those different labels. But now, as you and Freddie Gorman had partnered back up, and what became your entity into this music business? Because now we lived it as part of our daily lives. Because myself too, we had each of the blocks in my neighborhood had a group.
Exactly.
And back then, to participate in the group now, you had to know how to sing. Exactly. It just wasn't about having a group. They had a group that could compete, because like you mentioned earlier, it was competitive. So now we were part of that culture of the music history of Detroit. This is what we lived, but now it was turning into a business.
Yes.
So now, what was your entry into the business side of the music?
Well, I became the road manager. I resigned from the post office. I resigned from the post office in '67 after the riots. You know, opportunity was opening up, so I retired, went to school. I went to Electronic Institute of Technology. I went there, got my third-class broadcasting license. You know, I thought I was going to get on the radio, you know, be a disc jockey. It was located right next to Motown down in Woodward, right by the by the Fisher Freeway. That's where the headquarters was at that point. So I graduated from that, and Fred had asked me, he wanted me to come on and work with them, work with the group. I was hesitant, but I ended up, you know, I said, okay, I did accept the position as a road manager, which was great. I mean, it was the best job I ever had, because I loved music, obviously, and Fred, we were so close, you know. I mean, I enjoyed being with my man out there working with the guys. So that was it for me, road manager.
All right, I hear you. And that's too something we'll be talking about further in the show, the various jobs and careers that were developed out of this music industry. It was a great opportunity for us to become involved in all facets of the business. Mainly though, I would say, and I know you agree, our heart was in it.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't something we were doing because it was a way of making money, although it was, but our heart was in it.
Yeah.
We lived and breathed this business.
Oh, yeah.
And you mentioned the DJs, and I can always think back to all the different DJs that were on the radio at that particular time. So, but it's interesting, and we want to continue to tell you more about George's story. So stay tuned, and we're going to continue with the story of George Ramsey, a part of the Detroit music community with that sound that was heard around the world. And we want to talk about those who were a part of making it happen.